Hi, everyone, and welcome to summer school. If you were watching the video, I was literally kind of laughing when this started because me and Tom have been chatting for, I think, like 2 hours before this podcast has even started. And I was giggling and I'm like, we just have to stop talking because we need to save this for the pod. But I'm so excited that he's here. We have Tom Wright all the way from the UK, and he's bared with me through so much today. We had technical issues, took like an hour to get this camera connected, but we are here. If you've never watched the YouTube, honestly, just go watch the YouTube because at this point, it would mean a lot to me. But yeah, before we get diving into everything that is amazing about Tom, I got to shout out our sponsor real fast. We have Narrative AI. If you've heard any of the podcasts, I've obviously shout them out every episode, but they're the freaking best. Culling, editing software. They also have blogging. If you don't know, they've literally been around before most of the AI companies even existed on that blogging side of things. So that tool still exists. You can still use that. But the culling and editing specifically is definitely the forefront right now. And I've been using their culling, for like 5 years. I think when most people talk about AI softwares, they're talking about new softwares, maybe they just started using. I've been using their culling since it was in beta. So it's basically almost the only thing I've ever culled in almost in my whole photography career, which is kind of crazy. I was just like culling in Lightroom before, and it was a hot mess. So if you've never tried Narrative, definitely go click in the show notes. I think I have a discount for, I think, at least a free month, or there's something free about it. Click down in there. Go ahead and try it out. It's the best. You won't regret it. But now we're going to talk about Tom, who is also the freaking best. And I'm going to read his intro because I actually send questionnaires in our podcast. And you might not know that because there's nothing super scripted about the pod. But his intro was so good that I said, I'm just going to have to read this because it's great. So anyways, I asked him if he could write us a bio that goes in the blog. And this is so great. So Tom Wright. Tom Wright is like a therapist for your photography business. He calls it therapy because he helps you work out obstacles, creative blocks, learn new skills, build systems, experiment with new mediums, and provide support on an ongoing basis. He's not a doctor, but you'll for sure feel better. Tell me that's not the cutest thing you've ever heard. I'm obsessed. He definitely was my therapist for the past 2 hours. And I actually feel a lot better. I was kind of scared. If you're listening to this, it'll be, I think, either the week after WPPI or during WPPI. And I'm giving a keynote at WPPI, and I'm a little nervous, if we're going to be honest. So anyways, me and Tom are kind of dissecting a little bit of that and just my thoughts on the industry as a whole and all these conferences. So I'll be gone for the next 2.5 weeks between WPPI to Thrive in Scotland to Birmingham in the UK. I should learn my geography a little better. I could be butchering some of this. Scotland's technically the
England.
UK
You're
too. Everything, yeah. All of that to say, if you're in any of those areas, Tom might actually be hanging out for a field trip that we're going to be having in Birmingham. And yeah, if you're in any of those places, I'm throwing an event in each one of those places. So if you're listening to this and that has not already happened, definitely check whether it be our Instagram or join summer school because you get access to all of the events early. Honestly, go follow me on Partiful. For now, that's where I'm airing them. I don't know. Maybe I can drop that in the show notes. But that's a little update of what's going on. And I'm just so excited to have you here, Tom. I know now I've chatted for a while and you're like, hey, let me speak. But Tom, I want to know, for everyone that doesn't know you, like, tell them a little bit about your journey, though. Because when you say phototherapist, it's like, okay, but who is Tom? Like, yes, I know that we're all about to go through a journey on this episode of creative fulfillment, but how did you even get to where you are now?
Oh, that's a loaded question, and I definitely did not begrudge you talking for a long time. It was really, it was very gracious, and like it made me feel better about my writing skills. That's always good too. So thank you for that.
It was good.
I mean, I can't take credit. Actually, one of your previous guests, Daniel Knight Harris, like came up with the phototherapist thing because we'd done a session together, and he said, "You need to stop calling this workflow. It's too technical. You're more like my therapist." And it kind of went from there. And he's been a creative director for years, and he's awesome. And obviously, people can go back and listen, and they should. In fact, stop listening to me. Go listen to Daniel. But that said, you asked about how I got started. I got started out probably 15 or so years ago working for the Impossible Project, the company that kind of bought Polaroid's factories when they went out of business. They started producing color film, and it sucked. But it was the only instant film available at that point, apart from the stuff that Fuji made. And I remember I was kind of in Manchester, which is like the nearest city to me. And the distributors for this film just happened to be on a random street corner in Manchester that I walked past. They had a window display with maybe 40 Polaroid cameras, and they were worth nothing because you literally couldn't get the film anymore. So nobody wanted them. So I went on eBay and ordered 40 and challenged my friends to a scavenger hunt and bought 2 like cases of film. And we shot way too much film. And in the end, the people that took the best pictures got to keep the cameras that I'd bought.
That's so
they
cute.
kind of walked. It was really fun. And then I walked back into the shop thinking, well, I had fun doing that. I'll do it again. And bought another 2 cases of film. And the guy came up to me and said, you're the only person that's bought this film and come back for more, let alone buy this much. What are you doing? And at that point, I'd literally never picked a camera up before. But the reason that they were having problems is because this film just didn't work. Like you'd shoot it and the black and white film would start out looking fine, but it literally rusted. Like I've got some of those original Polaroids and they're like just brass. It's all brown. And the color film said it was color film, but it only actually had one color, and it was either green or pink, depending on how warm it was when you took the photograph. So my job ended up being traveling around the UK and showing people how to not screw up this film and help people to learn how to use instant film. But up to that point, I'd literally never taken a photograph before, but I am just that nerd. Like I used to be a guitar teacher, as a music teacher, had educational experience. I just thought, well, how is this any different? It's a mechanical system. We can learn it. So I did. And then over time, kind of moved out of doing those workshops for Impossible Project, shooting analog film and then digital. Worked as a wedding photographer for years and years. Moved into commercial photography for probably the best part of 3 or 4 years. During COVID, ended up on Clubhouse and being one of the few people in the UK that was on it early, and just started running rooms.
I wonder if we connected in Clubhouse, because that was what started a lot of my educational career. Clubhouse.
It's possible.
Man. I feel like we had to have.
The time difference is a factor, but in COVID, like I just didn't sleep. Like insomnia was real.
So true.
Like nocturnal, or and at that point, my son was like maybe a year old. So there wasn't a lot of sleep happening. But basically, a few people at the time kind of were coming in and we were having conversations. And I used to run a room called Positive Portfolio Reviews. And the idea was I'd just talk to people about the things that they did well in the photography, because I thought we're all stuck inside, we're in lockdown, we can't go and make new work. We all feel bad and we all know what we aren't good at. But sometimes you need somebody to show you what you're doing uniquely, or an area of interest, or something that's kind of a little bit different from normal, something that makes you special. So I used to just do those 2 or 3 times a week for maybe an hour, and met a lot of photographers through that, people that I consider to be friends till today. And I ran another one in the mornings in the UK that was just called Photographer's Coffee Morning. And the only rule we had was you have to be positive and you cannot pitch anything. So there was no sales in the room. And it just ended up being a really good support network. And when COVID ended, I went back to doing commercial photography and really missed speaking to people. So I started making consulting part of my work and education, and started teaching post-production, specifically like color correction, like how to deal with that, building presets, all that kind of thing. And helping people do the technical side of photography. So you mentioned before you were having technical issues. There's kind of like 2 camps in photography, I feel like. There are people that are artists that need help with the technical, and there are people that are technical that need to know how to develop their art. And I like being in the middle of that because I feel like I've got both skill sets and I know the value of both. So over time, I ended up doing more and more consultation work, more of this kind of stuff now, and gradually had to stop doing commercial work because I didn't have time to do both. So long story short, taught the guitar, taught for Impossible Project, started doing weddings, and then ended up doing commercial work, then education. And in every case, like things just gradually fell away as the other thing got to be a bigger part of my career. So here I am now, just a random guy from the north of England that's spending my entire life working with some of the most talented people I've ever met. People that you've probably seen on stages, you've probably heard speak. and I get to see the reality of what they go through and help them to kind of realize why they're valuable, and hopefully help them quiet that voice in the back of their head that says that they don't belong or they're not good enough.
And let me tell you guys, he's pretty darn good. I was very stressed before this call, and I walked out to grab a water, and I told my husband, I said, I'm feeling better. So I don't know if any of you need a little phototherapist. I feel like Tom is your guy. But specifically, I know that you also specifically enjoy talking about a few things. And I'm like, maybe we can dive into a couple of those. But what I find the most interesting about your work and knowing some of the people you help is that I do feel like you're helping highly, like, already artistic people, but you are not approaching it from like a commercial or corporate, like, do all these things to make all this money. It's such a more like holistic objective, at least from what I cannot even see you doing that if I had to picture that about you. You know what I mean?
I don't have it in me.
And so what I love is that you are helping people I know are very successful and highly technical and creative, which is also kind of an anomaly. And within that, you're kind of empowering them to even just be the best version of even themselves. What I think would be interesting to tell everyone would be, what does that look like on a practical level of, how do I word this? Like, for someone listening that they don't know who you're working with and they don't know the type of people you have helped, you know what I mean? Even though you said they might be on stages, things like that. If you could tell someone things that you're just really passionate about helping photographers in their current stage work through, I would love to know what you might see as like a struggle for the modern photographer today.
I mean, outside of the psychological stuff, which I think is massive, like I think there's so many mindset issues that people get into, but it isn't something you can kind of talk about as a topic. It's too personal and too individual. Like, one of the most common things I see is people looking at brand as being something separate to what they actually make. So people think about branding as like, oh, it's a logo, it's a website, it's color choices, it's this, it's that. When actually what brand is what your customers think about you. That's your brand. And there are so many different avenues to shape that. And as a photographer, we work in a visual medium. Like, every single time you press the shutter, you're doing something that has the potential to be career changing. You can do something that can completely change somebody's opinion of the way that their wedding day was or the way their product looks, all of these things. And sometimes we forget that the actual photography that we're delivering is our product. It's our visual identity. And a large part of what I do is to try and help people to understand what their work says to a potential client. So let's say we're looking at Summer's work and you see this kind of connected, carefree, kind of people in motion kind of attitude. It tells you something about the kind of person that would book. It's very unlikely that you're going to get an investment banker kicking down your door, like begging to be photographed, because that's not what you're projecting. So if your intention was, I really need to be charging $50,000 a wedding, I don't think that your work is positioned for that. So you need to think, well, how do I change? That. Yeah, because this is the point. We're built for these things and you don't want to change. But if you're in a career where you've been working as a photographer for 2 years, a decade, like, it doesn't really matter. You kind of build up a way of working and you get stuck in a rut and you start to do things the way that you've always done them. And you can kind of get trapped working for the same kinds of clients. And then when they either age out, because that happens to everybody, at some point, the people you're working for now will grow older and your style will not be the thing that the new kind of generation of brides, grooms, and otherwise below are looking for. And generational attitudes towards photography are very different too. But the point is that if you're doing this right, you try and find alignment with people. You look for somebody that wants the things that you feel perfectly poised to produce. And the thing that is most difficult is, one, if you don't know what you're perfectly poised to produce, that's a problem that you need help with, and that's something I can help with. Or on the other side, if you're already making the thing you love, you might feel smothered because you don't know how to make it repeatable, or you don't have systems built around it. Or you may not know how to talk about it. Because one of the things that people don't talk about enough is that Photographers are very often visually educated, but not in the practice of explaining what their work is to somebody that doesn't know about it already. So when to kind of make this a little bit more concise, I like visual identity for photographers because it helps them to remember that the things that they do before taking a photograph, while taking a photograph, and after taking a photograph with a camera in their hand or behind a computer is all brand building in a bigger, more meaningful way than anything else you can do in your business. And what I want is for every photographer to be able to express themselves in a way that's unique to them and has a market that appreciates it.
And I think that's so powerful because I think in at least the wedding industry, and I know there might be people listening that do seniors or families or whatnot, so just think of it like that as well. But in the wedding industry specifically, you're kind of like shoved and pushed so much into different directions, mostly because of education and things that you are innately kind of coerced into believing is the right path, is the right way, is what you should be doing. And there's not a ton of people kind of telling you you can technically do whatever you want and you still can make a livable income with the right marketing in place. And at the end of the day, you're going to survive a lot longer and a lot healthier if you actually enjoy doing what you're doing. I mean, I felt that pressure being someone that was teaching, but not being someone that was in the luxury side of the industry a few years back. I felt, and I'm not saying that anyone made me feel this way, I'm saying the industry made me feel this way. I felt as though for me to be respected as a teacher, that I needed to be doing the highest caliber of these weddings. And that is so false. And you know what? I let that feeling actually persuade some of my decisions, which I'm not saying that I actually think there was anything wrong about that. I'm so glad that I had that experience and I chose not to go into that side technically of the industry. But I remember point blank, because I think this could be educational for people, I have nothing wrong with being an ultra luxury photographer. I have nothing wrong with that. It's just not who I am. And so there's people that would do it better. But I remember going to a networking thing for it. I think it cost like $4,000 for one day. It's crazy. It was so cool, actually. I don't negate that experience. It was actually totally worth the money for what the event was. But I met a planner, and it really shook me because this planner had said, you know, if you actually want to make it in this space, like, you have to post more details. And I'm like, yep. I don't even like details. Let's be real. I love a good detail that's like cool. I like fashion. So there's a world where I can like it. But I don't actually innately enjoy sharing photos of flowers on my feed. It's just not who I am. Like, I love creating weird images with people, and it doesn't mean that I'm a bad detail photographer. It's just not the kind of portfolio I want to curate. It's just not who I am, you know? And it's not technically why I got into this. I product photos, just, I hate them. Like, I'm working on a product assignment right now for a software company. I don't mind saying this because he doesn't care that I feel this way. It's not something I'm passionate about. It actually is hard for me. I remember I tried to go to a coffee shop yesterday and take photos of this product, and I was like, wow, this is horrible. Like, the photos aren't horrible, but like emotionally, I'm like, I feel like a robot. You know, there's nothing human about that experience for me. That doesn't mean if you do product photography, there's anything wrong with you. It just means it doesn't light me up. And I got back from that networking event, and I was like, maybe I need to change my feed, you know, maybe I need to change these things. And I was like, man, but what's so hard? And the other side was my reels and stuff. They were like, you can't be posting like this. And I said, that's fair. And I understand that. I understand on a business perspective. Like, I totally get it, you know? But so it was just hard. And I was like, do I actually want to change? Or can I just have good enough marketing that I can pull a pretty large amount in clientele that I actually really enjoy? And I was like, you know what? Let's do that. That sounds more fun. You know, I still sit in a very comfortable range, normally between at least 8 to 15, shooting with just normal people. Like, I don't know, not that they're normal. Obviously, that's still a high price point, but I enjoy them and I enjoy the work I do with them. And I don't want to change anything about who I am or the type of imagery I'm creating to fit the mold of a certain side of the industry. So if you're listening to this, you can do anything. You could be a luxury photographer tomorrow. We could help you get there. You could be someone in my position. And, you know, maybe you're, instead of charging 50 grand for a wedding, you're going to diversify your income in some way, in some capacity, even if, I mean, not that you needed to. At the price range I'm in, I could be very comfortable doing wedding photography alone. But all of that to say, I'm going to give a random practical thing, Tom, because I think you would be like, oh yeah, that does happen. I think what's hard too is I think I also thought these people genuinely were wealthier. And I'm like, oh my gosh, obviously, like, we all want to be comfortable. And I think it was hard. A lot of it's not real. It's not, you know, a lot of the clothes are rented and the positioning isn't true, and you don't know what's actually going on in the side of the industry's personal lives. And
No.
they have a great second income, where they came from, what their backstory is. Obviously, there's some people that are probably freaking loaded. That's cool. But I had a takeaway when I asked a videographer how much she actually netted from a like ultra luxury experience. And the net was very similar to what I can do myself with my normal people, or like profit, not net, whatever. You know what I mean? And
I do know what
so
you're saying.
what
It's
she
what you
actually
get out
brought
of it.
home. Yeah. What did you actually
Yeah.
get to bring home, you know, after you paid this huge team? And I said, well, if we're all making the same amount, why don't I do what I like? You know what I mean?
Well, and that's kind of the point, because if you think about these ultra luxury weddings, that there's a reason why they cost that much. They're not
Oh,
crazy.
yeah.
People with money are not stupid. They know that a large proportion of this is because their event's larger and requires a different approach. But
And a huge
you
team.
touched on, absolutely, and you touched on something important before about following a template. Like, best practices are fantastic if you're trying to get the same result as the person that developed it. But the fact is, best practices absolutely suck if you're trying to do something unique, because it's already been done. It's literally just, it's paint by numbers. So when you look at these things and you see these conferences and they tell you, if you really are serious about getting in this space, do more
You have to do
detail
this.
shots.
Yeah.
100%, because the fact is that it's a different product, and you could develop for your ideal audience and be like the best in a given space. And I would say that your work is beautiful and well worth the price you charge for it. But you developed it so that it aligned with your artistic vision. And I think the problem comes in sometimes when people don't know what that is, where they feel like, well, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in this. And very often it happens most when people are capable. Like, photographers that are very technically able struggle the most to get clarity on what they want to say as an artist. So then very often they just follow the money, and then they find exactly the same thing that you did, that they're in a room that they don't feel like they belong in. They don't recognize the people they're working for, and all of a sudden it becomes performative or stressful. And it's hard to walk that back.
Oh, absolutely. I even think for myself, I say all of this with a grain of salt, because it's not as though I am in a similar position to everyone that hires me. You know, I'm working sometimes with, like, at a wedding, my highest in one last year or the year before, it's like he was a brain surgeon, she's a heart surgeon. Like, these people were a different kind of person than me and my husband, who are both artists. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean, so when I say this, I'm not saying you need to work with people like you. I'm just saying the type of work that I want you to do is attracting the type of people that respect that work and want it, no matter who they are, no matter what kind of money they have, whether they don't have any, whether they do, whether you end up wanting to give them a little discount because you really like their story, whatever that is. I don't want you to limit yourself by the coercion of what an industry makes you feel like you need to be.
Absolutely. And the other side of it's a product development thing. Because if you think about it from, let's think about inclusion. People talk about it a lot when it comes to like gender or kind of orientation, but there are other kinds of inclusion. Like, a photographer that charges $50,000 is making themselves unavailable to anybody that does not have that amount of money. And as you can probably imagine, that's like 99% of the population. So when you're designing a product, if your desire is to be accessible, you cannot build a product that requires that you work extended periods of time. It can't be something that requires that you give weeks of your life to kind of handle it. You have to design something to be affordable. There is a reason why McDonald's is one of the most numerous restaurants in the world. And it's because they designed a product for a price point and it met a need.
Mm-hmm.
And people poo-poo that, but I don't know about anybody else. I've had a Big Mac and they taste great. Just saying. Like, maybe not the most ethical thing on the planet, but they serve a purpose. And I think that there is this kind of act of vilifying people that try and make a product for mass market in photography. But if you feel like what you really want is to be a way for somebody that could not afford a great photographer to have something, there is a space for you to make a product that fits a price point. If you can do it locally, if you can do it in a way that is not taxing or draining on you and still produces a product that you're proud of and they value, that is a good exchange. So when someone's saying she's charging between 8 and 15, awesome, because that means that you can, this is not even knowing why you've done it, because we've not had this conversation, but that tells me that you can invest emotionally in these people. You can have a 6 to 12 month relationship before the wedding where you stay in contact. You can put your heart and soul and like get into hyper focus and flow on a wedding day and like not eat, sleep, all those things. Break yourself for a day, knowing that the day after you can rest because you don't have to then take another booking. So the way that you show up on the wedding day changes as a virtue of the price that you've chosen. So even though pricing doesn't feel like a creative decision, it absolutely is, because it changes the way you can behave. So when you think about photography, you can think about designing it for a purpose. So that $50,000 photographer that we said with the team and all the rest of it, they've designed a product because it solves an issue for somebody. And it's expensive because the problem is hard to solve. And in terms of the work that you're doing, the people that book you clearly care about genuine connection and photographs. It's a fact. So how do you get that? You throw yourself into it and genuinely connect with the people in the photographs. And those things are very often overlooked. And what you tend to find is there are people that occupy a price point because they know somebody. That can definitely be a factor. But when you see somebody that's designed the photography to fit in a certain space, it hits different. As somebody that's an artist, as somebody that's visually educated, you can look at it and see this is different. There's a reason why they cost this much. And that happens at every price point.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, because that side of that point would be what would be the reason that I would say anyone can be I actually, as much as, people would like to say I have to post the floral pics and do all the things, I actually know that had I wanted to, I could assert myself in the luxury side of the industry and still be in myself. Would it have been easy? No. Would there be some things I would have maybe needed to change on a practical level? Yes. But I think I absolutely could have been myself and asserted myself in that industry. I just think it would be a lot harder to not fit the mold.
And you didn't want to. That's
but I am saying on the encouraging side, you guys, I do believe you can technically make a place for yourself in any space. I just think it'll be a lot harder than what they're telling you to do at conferences, workshops, retreats, and what you're hearing is what you must do,
And the other side of it as well is that there's an industry built around education as well. Like I'm saying this as somebody that's obviously selling an education product. So like take this with an enormous grain of salt. But the people that you're learning from also have to run a practice, and they also have to be great artists. And we were saying this before the podcast started. Some of the people that we know that are the best photographers don't know how to explain what they do. And that's fine, because being a great photographer is not the same skill set as being a good educator.
Teacher, yeah.
You don't need to be. Because in the end, their success or failure comes from the business that they're actually undertaking, which is photography and servicing clients. And they don't need to do anything else because they're successful. So by virtue of the fact that somebody's teaching you, their focus has shifted. And I'm saying, like I said, my focus is 100% on the teaching, and actually at the moment not taking any client projects. But just remember that the person you're learning from, if they're still in the industry you're in, there is a chance that they're holding something back to try and not give you the last 2% that makes everything make sense. There was a conference I was at recently where one of the speakers talked about how they'd done this styled shoot, and then all the people in the audience were amazed by it. And then during a panel later in the conference, they said that they spent the best part of 4 hours taking portraits on a wedding, which is not, it wasn't dishonest. This person was not trying to hide anything, but it changes the way that you look at the education. And if that question hadn't been asked, it completely reframes the way everything goes. So when we're talking about it won't be as easy as it sounds on a stage. The reason for that is very often because you don't have a full picture of somebody's circumstances, like how they're able to produce that if they're producing this work at a wedding.
Man, that is so true. I think some I think the struggle what I my thoughts right now are like in so many places. I think what I want to hit on was your point of the education versus photographer. I think there are some people that can do both. I think the hard part is that I think it's sometimes less that they aren't good at both, and that on a business level, it is quite frankly very hard and most likely often unsustainable to actually do both really well. And I think that is
Yeah.
the reason you don't see it too often. I could admit that I feel in that position in some ways. Like, summer school and summer grace photo are two totally separate markets for everyone listening. Like, our membership is its own business, and I created it to change the side of education that I felt was missing. Um, but Summer Grace Photo still takes photos. We have at least 10 weddings this year. And that balance is extremely hard because when it comes down to the psychological side of how to actually run both of these, summer school is like legit, guys. There's like hundreds of members. Like it takes a lot of time to balance, who's teaching when, how do I feel about, bringing this person in, like, what are we doing next? I'm in the program. I'm giving my own advice, that is a lot. And for that to be good, I need a lot of time to give to it. And then there's Summer Grace Photo, who still shoots weddings. And as of right now, I actually don't fully want to quit shooting for the sake of summer school, because I think it helps summer school that I'm still in the industry and there's not a ton that are. But when it comes down to the practical side, I totally understand when people don't, because these are two totally different roller coasters that when it comes down to marketing, it's way different. Those are on two different rides. Like,
that's it. And it comes back to how you price the weddings even, because if you think about that gives you space to actually properly focus on what these people that are learning from you need, like your audience needs. It's an act of service. So when you look at prices, sometimes people can get a bit, why do they think they're so great? Their work's not like whatever. It's another thing you can do to give yourself time back to do these other things that you feel that you need to do. And if it wasn't for people like you doing this, well, we wouldn't have anybody showing people how this is done. And that's the point. You need both, especially if you're trying to give people relevant business advice. Because that's the thing for me. Like the advice that I'm giving is about visual identity and brand. And what that says are not about marketing. It's not about how do you actually get that client to book with you. That's a separate problem.
Oh, yeah.
And without the hands-on experience, like, can you imagine if somebody from even 5 years ago tried to tell you what booking weddings were like?
People do
they
that.
Might be think
people do have masterminds and stuff that they haven't shot weddings in years, and it's I think it's also because there are simple things you can do to technically make money. So I think what they're teaching is not false, but the relevance to what's actually happening in the current state of the industry is lost. And I think it can definitely be a negative if you plan on running only a business program. You know what I mean? I don't love it.
No, I can understand why, especially considering you go to such lengths to make sure you still do have that relevant first-hand experience.
I mean, we don't need to talk about me. See, we're going to get into phototherapy right now.
Sorry.
Tom's going to go in. We don't need to talk about me. I think all the points we've made and then hitting on my own personal experience probably is valuable for people to feel like they're hearing like an honest inside scoop, even into what I went through in the industry. And the point that you did make about the fact that you're not going to say it in this way because you're really good with your words. But basically, everyone's trying to sell you something, guys. When someone's selling you a Pinterest course, doesn't mean you actually need to do Pinterest. That just means that they want you to buy their course. And, maybe that's something that holds me back from launching different things sometimes. But just know when it comes down to marketing, you really just only need to be good in like two areas, and you need to focus on the ones you're actually passionate about. You can outsource the rest once you have bookings. So basically, that's kind of what you were saying without saying it in that technical way. But those people are just trying to also get their money. So just when you see education, be warned. You know what I mean? Like, not that the education's bad. People deserve money for the time they're putting in. But
Yes.
when it's like 20 different offers on 20 different things, just take it with a grain of salt.
And try and think about whether it aligns with what you actually need. I think the point you just made about
Mm-hmm.
the Pinterest course is only valuable if you need to learn how to use Pinterest.
Absolutely. It's not valuable because that person said you need to do Pinterest. It's valuable if you need and actually think that's a good thing for your business. I think the hard part is people don't actually know what they need.
Yeah, people very often don't know what they need, and that is something that I'm there to help with. But I think that's part of why one-to-one education tends to work a little bit better, because rather than it being just a case of buy my course, like this is the thing that you need, you can actually have a conversation and work out if you need anything. Because it isn't uncommon for me to meet with a photographer, spend half an hour talking. So I offered everybody a half-hour consultation. I don't want to work with you if it's not going to help you. And very often they don't need anything. Their editing's great, their workflows and business practices are fantastic. They just feel insecure about the thing that they're making because somebody's made them feel that way, or maybe they've got some money set aside from education from previous years and now they don't need it anymore. Now they are where they wanted to be, but they just don't feel like they've made it yet. And often trying to speak to a person and thinking, well, I can see where the development is, but you don't need to change anything, is something that people need to hear. Because if you've already hit your audience that you love working with and you love the way you take photographs and your clients love the outcome, you don't need anything. You've solved your market fit problem. The product you're making is perfect for the people you want. There are things you might want to do for personal development. Say you might want to learn to use a new tool. You might want to start shooting film for fun. You might want to start thinking about, well, what's the next thing that I want to explore? Can I do a character study at a wedding? Can I look at form and shape differently? Is there a way that I can get better access and maybe get more intimate photographs that I wouldn't have been able to get before? These are all things you can work on that don't require that you spend money necessarily. They just require that you look at your work as an ongoing practice. But as I said, the problem is that very often we're too close to the work, we're too close to the business, and we don't see what the opportunities are. And having an outside perspective to help you to understand what you're doing well is almost more valuable than having somebody correct a problem that you've got.
I would even say social media. I was thinking while you're saying that, without social media, a lot of these issues would potentially not exist. Because the level that we can now compare ourselves to, that doesn't technically matter and is technically irrelevant. We are all in our own journeys, in our own markets. We might not even live in the same countries. There's no reason to compare yourself to some Italian photographer that lives in Italy. There's just no reason. The only reason we can is because we can find it, not because we should be doing it.
And ironically, that's one of the reasons why being different to other photographers is so important, because I think people are generally wired to kind of find something they appreciate and kind of get tribal about things and think, well, I like it this way. I'm a light and airy photographer, or I'm a dark and moody photographer. And you hear those fragments, or you'll hear somebody say, oh, I like true to color. And those things don't actually mean anything on their own. What does light and airy mean? And in your head, you've got an idea of it. When I say that, everybody listening will see a thing in their head. But what I'm trying to show you is that the thing that you're thinking of is slightly different to everybody else's, and that's a good thing. Because if you see the world exactly the same way as somebody else, that isn't interesting anymore when we've got instant access to every photograph ever taken. And that's kind of where we get into. If you're on Instagram, you're instantly competing with so many other people. And I think we've all seen this movement away from very highly curated, color-corrected feeds where everything perfectly matches. And now we're seeing people connecting more with stuff that's unpredictable. There's a massive trend towards film at the moment. The photographers that I'm working with, most of them are trying to incorporate some level of film. And there's part of it that's nostalgia, sure. I think there's definitely that. But the people booking these film photographers don't have first-hand nostalgia for it. They didn't have their childhood pictures taken on film. They were that generation younger, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The reason they're appreciating film is because it has texture. It doesn't react the same way every time you take a photograph. There's an element of uncertainty in it. And when you see it on a feed, even though there's loads of film photographs, no two look exactly the same. They have this variability. So let's say that you're a photographer that appreciates that. and really likes that kind of thing. They want a bit of serendipity. Those old school film photographers that were dealing with this previously, people like Jose Villa, they did not have that look in their film. It was pristine, it was beautiful, it was textured. They used it for a different quality of that medium. And now that isn't the thing that people are attracted to about that art, that thing anymore. They want it for a different reason. So if you were following I want to shoot film, I'll do the film photographer playbook. Every film photographer would have a Contax 645. They'd be trying to find Fuji 400H, and they'd be sending the film to Richard's Photo Lab. And that would be everybody. And you end up with a new status quo, and everybody's work starts to get more similar. But even when that happens, you get Jose Villa, you get Elizabeth Messina, you get Jen Huang, and they're all using exactly the same equipment. They're all shooting on the same film stocks, but they find a way to express themselves differently using the same medium. And we would never know this if it wasn't for social media, because one of them is in California. I actually don't know where Elizabeth Messina is based, but Jen Huang was in New York. So you've got these enormous geographical kind of territories that they're covering. And I think a lot of aspirations for photographers is to be a destination wedding photographer. And if you want to be seen on a world stage and compared against these other people and flown to these locations, there needs to be something different about what you offer. But there is nothing wrong, equally, with designing your business to be the best in the area that you're in and only work geographically local weddings, because it changes the way you can interact with the client and it changes the price point. So again, it all comes back to branding.
And I believe that even if you don't want to have that high-end perfect look that those people that you listed off have, I struggle to believe that there's not really wealthy people that don't want something a little edgy. That's why you see celebrities hiring fashion photographers that have never shot a wedding before. It's just that our industry doesn't technically acknowledge that. And it would be interesting, instead of a film talk on like fine art and it being perfect, it would be so interesting to hear one on like the art of the grit. Like, I hired a gritty film photographer because that's what I liked. I didn't want it to be perfect. If I wanted it to be perfect, I would have hired a digital photographer.
Yeah.
And I know that there's going to be film photographers listening to this like screaming, and it's fine. But that was my taste. And I know that even in the luxury market, there are people with that taste. That's why you see celebrities and people end up talking about their photos and they're like, this is horrible, and you see it on TikTok because they hired some random paparazzi photographer, but that's because they wanted something different. That was their taste. And so I think there is space too, with everything we've said, to be that something different. And again, we go back to it'll just be a lot harder.
Absolutely. But like, last point on the film thing before we move on, like in fashion at the moment, there's a big trend towards people hand printing their photography.
Yes.
So they'll shoot on film, but they're shooting on film because they want to optically print it in the darkroom. Like, if you don't know, like when you print film optically, every print is different because the kind of color filters that you use and how long you expose different parts of the paper, it all affects the final result. And you end up with some really interesting looks that happen because they then scan this stuff and then it ends up on campaigns. If you've seen anything from Ralph Lauren, their photographer, James Harvey Kelly, a personal favorite of mine, a lot of his work is film, hand printed and scanned, and it has a quality to it that's unlike anything else. And it's not grit, it's definitely texture, but it's that thing of having a unique story. This is a one-off. The film in itself is already organic. The print is unique because there's only one print that he made, and he's essentially chosen the one unique print that he made and then digitized it. So there are so many areas and chances for unexpected happy accidents, and that makes me very happy because I feel like people forget about that when they look at digital, but that's equally possible in the digital realm. You can do things that add that level of character and quality, and for me, I don't actually shoot film at all anymore. I have to know about it because for me to understand what good color looks like, I have to understand film. But there are so many other things that photographers can do to perfect their craft beyond buying the new camera and the sharpest lens and allowing that to stand in for the taste that you have about the way your image should look.
You know what's so funny with you saying the fashion reference is that I actually had a fashion shoot 2 months ago for a local designer in Seattle, a friend of mine. And he has a men's like streetwear. I guess I need to, I'm not as in depth into the high end fashion world to even explain what he fully does, but he is a designer in that world. And his inspo, which is so funny that you said this because I was like, wow, you really are like, the industries. His inspo was darkroom print scanned digitally. It was old fashioned. I can't remember the specific designer, but I was looking at these black and whites and I was like, dude, with the budget you have, I absolutely cannot do that for you. I was like, these are literally like darkroom printed and scanned, and we don't have that time in the campaign we're working on. Like it is not technically feasible, but I can shoot some black and white medium format, try my best to get it to be similar-ish, but at the end of the day, what you're technically wanting is not technically possible with the scope of this project. And I just had to tell him that. But it was so cool. He was inspired by that. He just didn't know that that's what that was. And I was like, these are literally darkroom printed and scanned, like vintage high fashion designer images, and like old school, not modern. And I was like, as much as I would love to say I could do this for you, I cannot do this for you, not with the scope of the project that we have. But it was insightful for him to like learn what that was, and for him to be like, do you think you could do this one day? And I was like, I don't have a dark room. There is one in Tacoma. Like, maybe. But it was actually really cool conversation to have with a client. And then even cooler that you have seen that now becoming more popular as well, because the client also wanted it.
Well, that's the thing. It's huge. Like we live in, especially now that AI is becoming a larger part of the conversation, that getting something that's pristine and consistent is not difficult anymore. It's kind of ubiquitous. Like if you can spend time in an editing program, I can show you how to make a perfect edit. That's simple. The issue is that knowing how to introduce some of that character back is quite difficult, because you're right. If somebody wanted you to do it the way that should be done, shooting it on black and white film, optically enlarging it, printing it, all that kind of stuff, and then scanning the final print, it's too time consuming and expensive. And this comes back to thinking about your photography as a product development, because that product is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a photographer thinking, I want that aesthetic, but I want to be able to provide it at a more affordable price point, again, that's something that I quite like, because it's a technical challenge. And I can come up with ways that you can get 90% of the way there, as long as somebody's willing to kind of have it that the aesthetic matches, but the story doesn't. Because that's another thing. I think very often people look at marketing now and they want to see behind the scenes. They want to see how it happened, because it's proof of reality. It's proof of what's happened. And art galleries have had this for years. Like they prefer film photography very often because they can talk about the provenance. The negative, it was this film stock, he was in this place, they did this thing, it was enlarged this way. There was there's a gallery in Liverpool, which is about an hour and a half away from where I live, and it's called Open Eye Gallery, and they had entire wall-sized prints from child soldiers in Africa. Whoa. But they shot the campaign on Ektachrome, which Aerochrome, my bad, on Aerochrome, and that renders anything with green tint as pink. So there were these desert combat fatigues of child soldiers wearing bright pink combat fatigues in pink forests. Now, the story there is this photographer had carried an 8x10 camera around with him on his back, embedded with this basically miniature army, and took these photographs of these kids. There is no reason why he would have taken that into Photoshop and made those fatigues pink. And if he had, people would probably think, well, you're not showing the respect and dignity that it deserves. But instead, because he was using a military film designed for surveying, it tells the story in a different way. And it's another way that context is important. So if you think about the way that you make a photograph, it isn't just a case that a client doesn't care about what goes into making it necessarily. Sometimes clients care. Sometimes artists choose equipment because it enhances the story and makes the product better if you know it.
That's such a cool story. I'm gonna need to like look up these photos after the fact because even myself, I'm
I'll
like,
find you a link.
wow, that'd be so interesting and strange. That's such a strange decision. But I also respect that probably wouldn't be in an art gallery if it was just another photo of us of soldiers.
Well, that's the thing. It's like anything else that you need to think about the way this stuff is going to be perceived. Because the other problem you have is that very often I'll hear people say, "Oh, my clients won't notice the difference,"
Mm.
and I just don't know that I believe that anymore. Like,
Or I would even beg to say that we are tainted by expectation. Like, even for that military photographer, like him not believing that he had to do it in this way because that's what's expected of him. I would say, especially with social media at play, we are expected, as wedding photographers, where things are pretty regimented, to deliver a result out of what we think our clients want. But do we even technically know what they do want? I think that perception is tainted more by you than it actually is by any pressure that your clients are putting on you.
100%. And again, it comes back to this need to feel like you're doing it right, that you belong
Mm,
in the room that you're in, taking up space, which again is why I call it therapy. Because again, if you get down to the core of it, you probably already know the thing you want to make.
mm.
You just don't feel that you can. And if you genuinely don't know which direction to go, we can look at that. That's fine. But yeah, I think a lot of the time people know the thing that they want to make and just don't feel like they've got permission to do it.
What would you say to someone listening right now that's like, okay, they've talked about a lot of things, and if anything, I feel more confused about my current position than I do feel encouraged to go in one way? What would you say is some sort of practical application someone could take away from this of like, okay, I've heard how Summer has gone through things, and I've heard them process different versions of the market and different concepts. But if you had to give someone a practical, like, I would love for you to, in your weekend, sit down and just do this to help you better understand your artistry and what you actually enjoy creating, could you give someone something like that that you think would be good for them?
Yeah, yeah. So there are three things, and I'd recommend you do them in order.
Mm,
Um, Try and think about the times that you've been happiest as a photographer
mm,
while working. So think about the people that you were photographing, if they were people, or the things that you were doing. Think about the circumstances running up to it, the involvement with the client. Think about all that stuff. And I want you to get a really good idea of what it is. If you're the kind of person that writes stuff down, write it down. But if you're anything like me, just hold the idea of it in your head for a bit. And then I want you to look at your work and ask yourself, does this show people that's what I want?
mm. That's
And
so
if it
good.
doesn't, it means you need to do something. It means you need to make a practical change. And the first thing you can do is strip back and look at the work that you do think aligns with that. Look back at old weddings, see if you could find that stuff, and start sharing the stuff that you felt too embarrassed to share initially because you didn't think other people would like it. Because the fact is that if you're going to do photography as a career, you're already choosing something that is vocational. People choose this because they want to be an artist, they want to do something fun. Some people do it for money, and that's fine. But if you want to do the work of an artist and you want to get better as a photographer, isn't it better to succeed doing the thing you actually want?
Mm. Man, I'll be vulnerable, guys. If you want a direct example for myself, I used to love double exposures. Okay, guys? I literally definitely cut them out because I felt as though, at least in the side of the industry I was going to, this is just corny. And a funny example was Perspective by Sinmate. I don't know if I'm saying that right. You might know exactly who I'm talking about. They have a
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, I was on the podcast last year, I think. Yeah,
Ah, I don't know if I'm saying their title
Simon and
right.
Greg,
Yes, Simon and
Perspectives by
Greg.
Cinemate. Yeah.
Yes. So I was on their podcast because I'm teaching at Thrive and they interview Thrive educators. And
Mhm.
they have a portfolio review kind of thing at the end of it where they pull up your work and they want you to explain like why did you take what was going through your mind. And it was so funny because I think he mostly pulled from my website and I have not updated my website in a while. And I had literally mentioned something about double exposures and, I'd pivot away from them. We were just talking about things that maybe I had not been doing as much. I made a joke about them potentially being corny, but I walked it back. I didn't say I actually believed that. So that was kind of what I just started believing. Anyways, all of that to say, of course, the first image he pulls up is this double exposure. And he had no idea. He had chosen these images like many a weeks ago. And we both just sit there like kind of laughing. And I'm like, you know what? This is actually really good for me. I don't know if I said it in that, but I'm going to say it right now. It was really good for me because when you said, think about things that I really enjoyed that I thought were fun. Yeah, there's a ton of things that I really enjoyed a few years ago that maybe in some ways I'm not technically doing now because of the perception of what the industry would think of the work that I'm creating. And it's like, my clients don't care. They love that stuff. Who cares what people think? You know what I mean? Like my clients ate that up. Like, let's be real. And I actually really enjoyed making them, even if some people found them corny. So, you know what? Maybe I need to do that stuff again. I mean, there's nothing truly that I don't feel like I'm someone that's truly held back by other people's perception quite as much as some in some ways. I have really good boundaries about I just don't care. Like I'll post something on Instagram that doesn't technically make sense with the grid and like it's just business, you know? And so that boundary helps. But when it comes down to things like the double exposures or different things that it's maybe a toxic part of me and maybe you'll relate to this and this can help you not be like me and we can go through this together. When I see something even become too popular, it makes me almost not want to do it. And it's in
Yeah.
some ways a negative because when it comes down to your work, I can't let that actually fully affect the things that I really enjoy doing. And I really enjoy weird creative images. That's actually a direct example was me incorporating film into my work. I love film, but when people ask me, they asked me on this podcast kind of, so would you call yourself a film photographer who also does digital? Or are you like what are you? And I said, I'm not going to say that I'm only a film photographer because at the end of the day, for me, I still enjoy playing with digital cameras. And I think there's so much power in a digital camera that for my style, I can't technically do with a film camera, or maybe it's a risk I don't technically want to make. And there's nothing wrong with digital cameras. And I think we can get ingrained in that. And I'm like, there's certain things, some fun filters. I want to see what's happening. I want to use some fog and I need to see what's actually happening not only with my own eye, because digitally I can actually see it in a way that's different than my physical eye can see it. And I've just learned to own, like, there's really nothing wrong with a digital camera, no matter how popular film gets in the industry. And I still shoot both, but don't limit yourself by any of these things. And it was enlightening. You guys will have to listen to the podcast, and Tom, you'll have to listen to it when he pulls up the double exposure. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should do those again. Like
Honestly,
seeing my style
you
shift
should.
by what the industry expected of me.
Like you definitely should, because I think double exposures are cool and I can't do them to save my life. I've tried. But I mean, to give you a prime example, if you think about the cheesiest photography technique you can think of, spot color, right? Until I saw a photographer doing it like it was a Russian propaganda poster. Like they used to use single color screen print. So it's black and white with one color over it. And they'd taken this approach where the only thing in the image was red. There was one specific shade of red, and wherever that shade appeared, they like normalized all the other colors so they were exactly the same shade of red. So it looked like it had been silkscreen printed onto paper. And they did this for a series of like 20 street photographs. And it was super cool. And yet, if I said to somebody, today I saw some really cool spot color photographs, you'd think I was like insane, because that's not a cool thing. Like, it's not a cool thing. But the point is that the more you limit yourself to the kinds of things you're going to try, the less likely you are to come across something new. And when you get to the stage where you're charging for this stuff, it is different. Like, you have to kind of look at it and think, does this fit? Is this part of the story I'm trying to tell?
Absolutely.
But especially for you, Summer, like double exposures are exactly what you're trying to do. It's a one-off. It's serendipitous in the sense that you have to pre-visualize it. You have to see the scene.
You have to plan
your
it.
medium, plan it, and then you have to execute it perfectly. Otherwise, it doesn't work, which is why I'm terrible at them, because I do not pre-visualize well. I'm a really reactive photographer when I'm working. And I think that this, again, is the more you know about your strengths and weaknesses, the more you can make your business something that feels like it's uniquely yours. And you don't have to cut yourself off from trying these ideas because you think the concept is bad. You just try it and see if your version is bad. And if it is, don't do it again. It's fine.
The other image they showed was this image, and I said, wow, this is crazy. You guys are bringing up some old work of mine. It's like 3 years ago, and it's super moody. I was definitely a little moodier. I'm going back into that. I've actually told people, like, I was at this workshop teaching, and someone was like, oh, look, it's 2020 summer. We were like in the woods, and it was foggy. And I said, guys, 2020 summer's back. And I was just like, screw it. Who cares? Like, I'm just going to do what I want. But anyways, all this to say, they pulled up this image and it's so moody. It's black and white. He can barely see what the image is because of his teleprompter. And it was already, a darker image. And they're like, we just want to know how this was lit. I said, guys, it was literally just a lamp on the barn. I just didn't include the lamp in it. Like, it was like it was literally just a light on this like ugly barn. And it is so funny because I was like, wow, my mind would have never thought that someone deeply like respected that image. Do you know what I mean? Because they're like, oh, the lighting is so interesting. And I was like, oh, whoa, it's the positive portfolio reviews. You need to do something like this at some point in summer scores. I don't know. You don't have to do that. But like hearing the feedback of what someone else actually liked, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I like it too, but I don't know if I believed that other people liked it. Do you know what I mean?
Yep,
it was so interesting. And I was like, oh, well, and they're like, so why'd you take that? And I was like, well, I don't know. I saw a light and I thought, it would be cool if that hit her face. And so we did that. It was not natural. That's why I'm not a documentary photographer. Like, that's why it's not my style to be, a Tracy Jade. I think that's so freaking cool. But my mind is drawn into, oh, I see that I could do this thing. I'm going to set it up and it's going to happen on a wedding day. And yes, it takes some planning and pulls them out of maybe certain moments, but my clients like that. And my goal, if anyone's curious, is definitely like, I just want them to leave feeling like they have an image that feels maybe not like a wedding photo. It feels like a piece of art that would be fun to hang on their wall. And it doesn't have to be cute or perfect. Most of my clients tell me they don't want to be cute. That's like actually like a common thing. They're like, literally had one. They were like, I don't want to be cute. Like, that's just not who I am. And I'm like, cool, let's go. You know what I mean? And so it's just super cool, like chatting with you and for everyone listening, hopefully hearing this vulnerable side of myself and my own style and evolution of things. That it's funny because Tom, I feel like a fairly confident person, but even you've made me realize so many things. And just this one conversation about even my own style, I'm kind of like, not a loss for words in that way, but I'm like, whoa, guys, I'm being very vulnerable in this podcast episode.
I think you can be both. That you can be incredibly strong and powerful and still be open. And I think Absolutely. That's one of your advantages. Like, I don't know about you. Like, I think it's quite difficult when somebody projects this idea of like having everything perfectly together. It's almost not relatable because I don't really know any real people like that.
Not at all.
And being able to talk about your artwork like it's not a finished product, but presenting it as a cohesive body, that's the game. That's the whole game. And like trying to get to this point where you're completely self-expressive and you've got a client that perfectly fits, that's the work of a lifetime. So if you just pretend that you've got it all together, even though there's progress to make, I don't think it works. And people like you strike an incredible balance with this, like showing that you're vulnerable, doing the work, still helping people along the way, not pretending to have everything perfect. And I'm going to mention him again, like Daniel Knight Harris. Go back and listen to his interview. He is another person that does not pretend to be perfect, but is very good at listening to people and an incredibly talented photographer.
So talented.
But talent, very much so.
So talented.
But talent is one part of it. The work and effort and sweat and thought that goes into every single wedding proves that he is worth the money that people pay him. And I think that's the thing. Like, you don't have to be perfect to be professional. You do not have to be complete to sell an expensive product. What you need is to be able to deliver what you promise and to try and make sure that you're satisfying your client first, but making sure your career is developing in a direction that you're comfortable with.
Okay, everyone, that might sound a little abrupt, but technically my camera died because me and Tom, if you were listening to this episode, of course, it's been over an hour, which is freaking wild, and it's been such a good time. So instead of pretending to pick up where we left off, I'd rather just be honest that that is what happened. And we are back in the episode, and we're going to head into recess soon. So if you don't know what recess is, it's the exclusive version of the podcast where we get into maybe the more practical side and the less conversational side, but I think both are extremely valuable. But if you want access to that, that's inside of our membership, along with over 20 classes from myself to guest educators and a growing community of hundreds of photographers from across the world. So if you're not inside Summer School the membership, you should definitely hop over there right now. But for now, I want us to end kind of on like a positive note. Tom is known for positive portfolio reviews and helping photographers believe in themselves. And we've chatted through so many ideas and even the 2 really practical takeaways. But if you had any encouragement that you would want to give everyone right now, if they've heard everything we've said, and maybe they feel discouraged, or maybe they feel excited and they love the vulnerability, whatever they do feel, if you had to encourage them in a way to help them move on past this episode, I would love if you just give us kind of whatever's on your mind right now when I say that.
So I just wanted to reassure anybody listening that I've done hundreds and hundreds of portfolio reviews at this stage, and I've spoken to hundreds of photographers one-on-one. I am yet to find somebody that didn't have something unique to contribute. And I am convinced that there is something unique about the way that you work that you are not seeing because you're too close to it. When you look at your photographs, I want you to remember that other people don't see the struggle that you went through to make that. They don't see any of the pressure or any of the pain. They just see the artwork on the other end. And that sounds like it can be disheartening if things are difficult. But the advantage is that they see the beautiful thing in your work. Every single photographer has a unique eye, and I think that can develop a unique voice. You are capable of making the work that's in your mind's eye right now. And if your mind is blank and you're not sure what direction to go in, there is help available for you. You are enough. As a photographer, you are more capable than the stuff that you sell to clients. And as a person, you are more varied than just being a photographer. Your life is valuable. Your experience is valuable. The things that you want to do are unique, and we all want to see it. So if you're not sure what to do, reach out to somebody, get some advice, to me, to a Summer, to anybody. You are valuable. The work you make is unique, and we want to see more of it.
That's so beautiful. Guys, I love Tom. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tom. If anyone was kind of audio only right now, obviously everything's always linked and everyone knows that, but where can they find you? Where can they find this underground sacred agent consultant man? You know, that's kind of how I feel about you. I know you might not feel that way, but I feel like coming across you, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's had his hand in so many places. How am I just now meeting him?
Well, the reason it's just now is because I'm a massive, like, I also have the imposter syndrome that everybody else has got, and taking up space is tiring. But the other thing is that I think that people that I work with deserve the credit. And I don't want to shout about myself. Their achievements are their own. I want them to be able to revel in it. And if somebody likes working with me, they'll talk about me, and that's fine. But for everybody on the podcast, my website is www.bytomw.com. So it's bytomw.com. My Instagram is @bytomw, exactly the same as my website, but I don't really post there. What I do on Instagram is DM a lot. So if you have questions, you want to give me like some pushback on anything I've said or disagree with me, want some advice, want some help, some encouragement, drop me a DM. I offer a half an hour consultation free for everybody that potentially might want to work with me in the future. So feel free to look at the website. If you like the sound of anything that I do, book in. We can have a conversation just like this, one-to-one. But yeah, I'm not big on social media, not because I don't believe in it, but because I would rather put my time into conversations with people, and I'd rather talk to you. So if in doubt, I'm saying, please reach out. I want to help.
I love it. Guys, if you love this episode and you feel like someone in your life might need to see this, hear Tom's perspective, get to know Tom, go ahead and share this with a friend right now. Leave a review. That helps me get amazing guests like Tom in our world. Like, I'm just so grateful that you came in and were a part of this experience. I'm more grateful that you're about to come do recess with us, but definitely share this with your friends. Put it on your stories. Shout him out. I freaking love you, Tom. I'm so glad that you came, and I can't wait to catch all of you soon. If you are going to be in Birmingham, Tom might be there. I'm trying to convince him to come. But, anyways, even if he's not there and you're in the UK in general, I will be there. And I would love to connect with anyone listening that might be listening from over in that area, or if you just happen to be there. So, anyways, definitely hit me up, hit Tom up. I'm sure he would want to connect as well. And I will catch all of you super soon. Bye, guys.